Nebraska Prep's postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
That's the big voice guy. That means we get to do this again for another week. I apologize about my voice, Jacob. I'm going to sit next to you just because I feel like just to be close to you. No, I'm kidding. Another great week. That means Jacob and I get to talk high school sports. My voice is coming around. It's not great, but we don't care because we like to focus on what you have to say. How are things? How are we doing?
Good. Season has started. We've got games to talk about. That's the exciting part. Although now a bit of schedule juggling here with the heat wave that we're going through. It sounds like going to get one in late Thursday.
Yeah,
night?
so I think they're going to move Miller North Papio back to 8. And who has the floor clock in Lincoln on Friday? Is it Southeast?
Southeast and Elkhorn is in Lincoln. No, it's at Elkhorn.
Okay, so that's going to be at 4.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of the combination of having the field space available, and is it going to be better at 8 o'clock on Thursday night or 4 o'clock on Friday, where it's still going to be hot, just in the 90s, and you're in the afternoon under the sun, versus 8 o'clock, sun's starting to go down. So I guess that was kind of the conversations that the administrators had to make, and ended up moving one to Friday, and other games moving to Friday as well, just to avoid the 100-degree temperatures. But we'll get one in tomorrow night, so
should be a good one too.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me ask you this: as a guy that had to like juggle schedules and kids at practice, and you longed for continuity, how much do you think the fluctuation of practice schedules could hinder what we see in what's already an unpredictable week 1?
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, of all weeks for it to happen this week, where you're jumping around, and I know you told us about kind of what your practice plan. You guys got creative with it to make it happen, and I'm sure everybody's
kind of handled it a little bit differently, right?
Yeah, gone inside, gone early in the morning, gone somewhere else, like just had to find different ways to make it work and keep the kids safe. So applaud the people in charge that are trying to find these creative solutions, because this isn't something that typically have to deal with. But yeah, we'll see. I guess it depends on what the coaches are able to get done in these practices, how much they're able to make it seem like a normal practice, cover everything that you had planned if you had the normal field available, normal time and all that. And we'll kind of see how the different staffs and teams adjusted to what they had to deal with.
Yeah, and kind of a shout out to administration and the athletic directors, principals, I think staff. You know, the districts made some certain allowances for practice to occur, kids to, I mean, you're not encouraging folks to show up late, but you know, I know North one day went from 7:15 to 9 a.m., right? That takes everybody on the same page within the building, within their block scheduling, to be able to pull practices like that off. So I think just administrators across the board, teachers, athletic directors, the busing scheduling, it really took some creativity. So it wasn't easy to pull off. And it's good to kind of see athletics being recognized as important. Right, not kind of an afterthought. And listen, I get I get academics, right? I mean, school is obviously important, but when you show that those kinds of things matter, I think that it
get more out of the students.
It helps. Yeah. It helps school spirit. I completely agree, 100%.
So that's this week. But before we kind of get into previewing some of the games this week, and we got a couple games to talk about from last week. Yep. Obviously, starting with the big classic game that you and I were both at, along with you and pretty much the rest of your team, your coaching staff, and a bunch of your team. And,
did you see us kind of rally mosey on in there? We just
knew, little red corner over there, the prep section.
We just knew we weren't going to be able to get film, right? It's like we tried, and
glad everything kept it all civil over there with the prep and the west side right next to each other.
It's very interesting, right? You know, when we got ready to leave, I typically try to get along with everybody, and one of the parents that I know, she was like, "Hey, see you next week." It just was kind of weird, but we obviously wanted to get a chance to scout and kind of see what was going on, so it worked.
Yeah. So the game itself on the field, I don't know that it went quite the way that most people expected, but that was it's a good showing by Creighton Prep. Bellevue West ended up winning 27-14 with a late touchdown with about 30 seconds left to kind of stretch that out a little bit more. But it was, I mean, Prep had a 14-13 lead at one point. It was a one possession game throughout the fourth quarter up until that last touchdown. So Prep, I mean, didn't really know what to expect with them losing as much as they did, only having a few key guys coming back and having to fill out around them. But I think they showed well for themselves, even if didn't necessarily move the ball at a great rate, like didn't rack up a ton of yards. I mean, they only had 208 yards total from scrimmage, but they found a way to kind of junk up that game to keep Bellevue West from getting the high-powered passing offense going, and really made them grind out that game.
Yeah, the thing that I liked, and it's always, who to credit, who not to credit in week one, and is Bellevue West this. I think as I look at that game, I give more credit to Creighton Prep for their game plan and their approach than I thumb my nose up or I think Bellevue West is not what I thought they were, right? I get week one, but sometimes you just have to give the other team credit. And I think Prep deserves a fair share of the credit more than Bellevue West should own some of the blame, because it's not their problem to meet our expectations. They're trying to win games and get better, right? It's because we had a misguided vantage point of how we thought that game should go. I'm not going to hold that against Bellevue West.
Yeah. Prep really kind of dared them to run the ball. They packed in the back end, and there was
how about that? Safeties 14, 15 yards deep. You were not getting behind.
What was impressive was that game plan, and Zach McClay still had 13 tackles, was all over had a pass breakup, had tackle for loss. He was really impressive.
In my opinion, he's a Power 5 guy. He is I'm telling you, he's a really good player. He's a sensational tackler. He changes directions really well. He's certainly a Division I guy. And in my opinion,
another one.
McClay is a really good player. We've tried to watch as much as we could and get film, but we saw it live. His tackling in the open field, his toughness, he's sensational.
And Bellevue West had a lot of really good individual defensive performances, but I think McClay was probably the best defender on the field.
And I think he was easiest to see, other than when Bellevue West was getting a sack, because it's easy to see who gets the sack. McClay can stand out because he's out in space against, the three-headed mountain.
Good athletes out there.
I mean, Hall and McMorris and,
Then Goodwater got to a good start, and obviously TJ Whaley led him in receiving.
How good is Whaley?
He made some really impressive throws. He was running free down the field, and Kalen finished 22 at 35 for 225 yards. They never really got the downfield passing game going. Couldn't connect with Hall down the field. Most of McMorris's catches were all the screen, close to the line of scrimmage type of stuff. Goodwater had a few nice kind of intermediate catches early on. Whaley is one that led him in receiving, 74 yards on 5 catches. But wasn't quite the passing performance that you would expect coming in just knowing the names. But they actually did a pretty darn good job running the ball. They got a nice performance out of a couple guys there, with CJ Goff leading the way, 15 carries, 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Charlie Gwinner.
So good to see him back.
Yeah,
I'm
got hurt. He was
I like
first play of the season last year, right? Got hurt. So they were excited about him coming in as one of their backs last year, and hurt right away. 12 carries for 71 yards and 2 touchdowns. So almost 200 yards on the ground between your two backs. I think they'll take that every day, because you expect we'll get a few more of those big play connections going forward. Defensively, Jules Dubois led him in tackles with 9, 2.5 for loss. Dylan Sheard was all over the place.
Hey, how good of a acquisition is Sheard? Sheard changes the way that they can play defense tremendously.
eight tackles, a sack, fumble recovery, and then right there with him, Chris Lawson, 8 tackles, big man in the middle. He was 8 tackles for kind of a nose tackle, big 300-pounder type dude. He was impressive.
They kept trying to reach him on zone. I couldn't figure out, like, you're not going to cut the big fella off.
Big 90, he was impressive.
He's moving.
Yeah. And Stanley Hayter, 3 sacks, 6 tackles in all. He was the one that popped the fumble free. He was really impressive getting pressure off the edge. And then Caprice Keith had sick interception, broke up another pass, 4 tackles, and then picked up the offer from Iowa State after the game. So congrats to him, just a sophomore out there. Certainly looks apart and shows that he can make the plays as well.
Yeah, was a good performance. I'll be curious to see what happens. Obviously, both teams get the advantage of a week 0 game, but have very difficult opponents coming up as North has Bellevue West. I believe that one's at John Feynman Stadium, so at least they'll be in the friendly confines, but a good quality top 5 opponent in North. And of course, Creighton Prep travels to West Side for a tough one Friday night.
Yeah, and they're going to have to find a way to get a little bit more going offensively. Again, 208 yards. Tony Caniglio had
He's
beautiful,
a tough kid.
Didn't get much going as 5'11" passing, but had a beautiful throw down the field over there to Jackson Wergler. Laid it right on him, beat the DB for the 44-yard touchdown, but had a 23-yard completion right before that. But outside of that, they didn't really get any chunk plays. I thought Andrew Walker, the sophomore running back,
he looked to be the more explosive
Yeah.
of the two. He is a nice, nifty runner, and if I remember right, he's just a sophomore, right?
Yep.
He looked way good.
10 carries, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Veteran Jacob Ruby there at 11 carries, 54 yards, kind of did some of the tough work
Workman-like.
early on.
They kind of really softened up the body blows.
Yep. So they missed Michael Burt on
on the boot.
Yeah,
he had him wide open.
Yeah, had him just got to be able to connect on that, get him a little bit more involved. He is more of an inline blocker. That's kind of its bread and butter.
How about if they scoop one fumble up? And score, and because they can get points out of that drive.
Yeah.
Right. If they just pick, I always tell our guys, listen, if a ball is not rolling, push it against the ground, pick it up. That ultimately cost them. That could have been a scoop score.
Yeah, they were threatening. They had a chance to punch that thing in. Although benefited by a penalty that extended the drive. They missed a field goal and running into the kicker. So they got another chance and weren't able to capitalize from there. But so that's impressive by Prep, but obviously for a week 0 performance, a lot of new guys. Now they have to build on that, find a few more ways to move the ball a little bit more consistently. But Bellevue West, I think they'll be fine. Again, week 0 performance, first game in.
Jacob Barreau picks up the preferred walk-on offer. And listen, Coach Huffman's not dumb. He's done this a long time. And I think he knows if he wants that offense to be what it's capable of being, he needs to maybe add a QB run dynamic. Were you surprised at how many design runs there were for DK?
9 carries for 30 yards, and most of them were design. It wasn't a lot of scrambling there. It was put your head down and go. And didn't get a lot of no chunk plays out of it, but just kind of showing the willingness.
They did it enough
that you
have to scout for it.
Yep.
Right. Like,
and I think
you have to put that in now, the scouting report.
And I think that was their game plan going in there with that. So yeah, we'll see. Defensively, there were a few busts. They had a couple failed contains early on, gave up some
really struggled with the boot game. They'll tighten that up.
Yeah. With new defense, first game in, for having 2-3 busts where they gave up some big time plays, they still gave up only 208 total yards, which means they did their job the rest of the time.
They have a lot of good individual pieces. If they can come together, they got a chance.
All right, so that was kind of the main game you and I both were at. We can kind of bounce around here, look around the state, some scores, some results. The other
North Platte Papio South.
Yep, that's the other kind of bigger Class A one there. With Papio South making that trip out there to North Platte.
Never easy.
He said never easy, but 41-35, Papio South pulled out the win. And some impressive performances. Quarterback Sam Schuler, effective, 12 of 18, 204 yards and a touchdown.
Goes up top right away, sets the tone for that one for the Titans.
Yeah. Favorite target was wide receiver Royceon Skogerbo. 5 catches, 111 yards, and a touchdown. mentioned big completion right off the bat.
Yeah, I think that was first play of the game, and I'm going back. I'm like, wait a minute, is that how they started this thing? And so, I mean, welcome to the Metro.
And Schuler dual threat, 67 yards on the ground and touchdown, only 5 carries. Obviously, Devin Jones has been the running back for a while for them. Now it's Derek Jones, just a sophomore, 19 carries, 198 yards, and 4 touchdowns on the ground and 2 catches for 54 yards.
Pretty happy for D. Like, he's kind of been in the shadow. Explosive, right? Just I felt like I was trying to get updates, because we obviously were at the game, and I had a buddy out there that made the trip from Gretna to North Platte, and I thought he was messing with me. Sometimes when you're in a stadium and Wi-Fi messes with you, and he kept saying Jones for a long run, and I was like, is this the same message on repeat, or was it just
got that recorded?
No, so after like 5 minutes, there was finally some different punctuation in there, so I knew it was just repetitive and not that it didn't come through and it just kept sending, right? Like, I'm like, does he have a bad signal, or is DJ really just working out like that? It turns out Derek was having a day.
And the one thing you have to be able to do when you play in North Platte is tackle, because they are going to give you a lot of opportunities with that option run game. And Kylan Connor, 17 tackles.
It's a lot.
Ty McDougal, 13 tackles and a sack. Ty Jelinek, 11 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups, a forced fumble. Ben Schaefer, 9 tackles, 3 for loss, 1 sack.
How about the dual sports of the Jeleniks, right? Yeah. It's just like, watched younger Jelinek on that 8th grade basketball team, knew he was headed to Papio South. Like, that's a good last name to watch going forward for both.
Yeah, and Papio South, they had the 34-21 lead after 3. Then North Platte scored a couple touchdowns in the 4th quarter, tried to cut it down a little bit, but Papio South was able to hold on there.
When you're talking about kind of, Class A gets off to the quick start with the 2-week 0 games. When you're looking at what you want to see in week 1, do you have a hard time not basing it off what you saw last week?
Yeah, because that's
or will that kind of be your barometer?
Yeah, because that's all you have to go off of. So
it'll be everybody else's week. Because it's not. One. I don't know. Will you hold WS to a higher standard now? Will you hold prep to a higher standard?
Yeah, that and you talked about previously. Like, would you rather have the scout, or would you rather have the practice or the unpredictability?
Yeah.
And
if I knew I wasn't going to get the film, I may change my mind, because before I was like, give me the tape.
Yeah.
But we did get to put eyes on it. It was old school charting, old school playwriting. That's fine, right? Sometimes you'd rather see
it in person. Engaged and really locked in.
Yeah, right? Like, I didn't leave until, 50 some seconds left to go. I didn't think WS was going to punch it in, but hey, to each their own. I get it. But I did appreciate being able to see that live, but I don't know, like, will we get the benefit of the doubt when you go to look at all the other 99% of the teams that are playing in week 1 or 2 for some, if you count last week as week 1. I don't know where we got week 0. I'm not a big week 0 guy. Usually you just start when you start.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's whatever.
Yeah, it's just kind of people are like getting the most out of it. Like, all right, let's make scheduling easier now. I'm sure
there's something philosophically that weirds me out about calling something that has value 0.
Yeah. And it makes sense from the perspective of, like, nobody else is playing. It's week 0 for everybody else, but it's week 1 for the teams that are playing. Right. So
this is not JP and ODB here for semantics police. We're just kind of going back and forth.
But anyway, we got some Class B games that hit on too, and bit of a surprise.
I think so.
We talked about Norris kind of gotten beat up over the years, like hanging around but not really making a splash. Right off the bat, going double up Blair, 42-21, and Blair, the team we talked about in our preview last year,
not quite as healthy as they wanted to be going into that one.
Yep. And so now this week's coaches poll, Norris has jumped up to 6. Blair's still hanging in there at 10. But yeah, impressive performance from Norris. Jarrett Barnes at quarterback, 11 for 18, 148 yards and a touchdown, 45 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Blake Macklin, 10 carries for 85 yards and a rush, and it had a 99-yard kickoff return touchdown. Eli Holt had 2 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown. Catches at 42 and 40 yards. Talk about a big play threat there. He carried the ball 7 times for 31 yards and 2 scores. Had 11 tackles, so really impressive all-around performance from him. For Blair, Bodie Suckup, we talked about him, 18 to 30, 163 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Brock Templar, 19 carries, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 2 catches, 26 yards. Ethan Bessler had 7 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown receiving. So, 42-21 again. That kickoff return, obviously, you get one of those that changes games a little bit.
And Uncle Mo changed in a hurry, right? It's just like, whoa, bang, points. Special teams, especially early in the season, has this uncanny way of impacting games. We know it can be critical and good late, but man, it's amazing how those that work on it early can reap the benefits while other teams are still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, early in the season, special teams, cleanliness, obviously penalties, a lot of cramping issues early on. We saw that with Bellevue West. Had a number of guys had to step out with cramps. Those are all issues that you got to deal with early on in the season when you haven't had the reps under your belt. The weather's hot and you're just getting out there for the first time for some of these guys. Impressive performance from Norris, pushing themselves up the rankings there. Elsewhere in Class B, Elkhorn North, number 2, beat Beatrice 21-3.
Yeah, on the road. I think they went to the Orange, didn't they?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Impressive defensive performance, held Beatrice to 145 total yards. So like 56-89 split. That's all they gave up. Jet Tinglehoff, 17 carries, 135 yards on the ground and a score. Johnny Ferguson, 4 of 8 for 73 yards and a touchdown, and 12 carries, 57 yards and a touchdown. Lofton, 4 catches, 36 yards. Tommy Mechna had 38-yard receiving touchdown. And then Chris Steetson led the defense with 9 tackles. They had a couple of sacks in there, Sam Huff and Sam Thomas. So, again, 21-3 is the final on there. Good, strong defensive performance from Elkhorn North to start the season.
And on paper, a very favorable schedule to start as they get Lincoln Northwest, the first-year program, actually playing varsity competitive games, and Crete. So Elkhorn North has a chance to gain some early season momentum before they take on GI Northwest.
Yeah, and Pius X beat Lincoln Northwest 42-14. You got Colby Volkmer back at quarterback, big guy there. And then Crete won 31. And then Crete won 31-29 over Omaha Westview, elsewhere in B. So those 2 teams they mentioned coming up for them start off the season like that. Anything else stand out to you from week 1, or we want to look at
not so much.
Or week 0?
We should be in agreement there. If we were back at the high school, Coach Lamanji would call us, and he was not very happy with us yesterday, where some of us were referring to our week 1 opponent by name, while some say week 1 opponent. He wanted to make sure that we were saying week 1 opponent. So it's just weird. You know, you're getting these meetings and he's like, hey, this is a pet peeve. I just want to clear the air right now. And I'm just like, I'm looking around. I was like, okay, who said it? You know, it's just, we want to be on the same same wavelength here, common language. So for the opening week for the other teams, there are some big matchups, and it starts tomorrow at 8:00. They get the little later start, which is a long night. Don't sell that short for folks that start their mornings in the 6:00 hour.
Yeah.
Right? Don't be dismissive over what kind of day that typically can be, but especially, Jacob, without teams being able to go in the afternoons.
Yeah.
Right. So that pushes the schedule of the body clock off that much more to play a game.
Especially for your first game, you got to wait an extra 2 hours.
We're trying to get our guys to bed by 8 or 9. I'm serious, right? Like, I mean, you go at 5:15 in the morning and you bring them back at 3:30 to hit film. Like, we're trying to get them in bed by 8. This one won't kick till 8, but fortunately for us, they're going to play the game tomorrow, and that's Milton North and Papio.
Yep. So that's kind of the one big one left on Thursday, and with some games moving back, that man, an already loaded Friday becomes even more loaded because now you have the Elkhorn South, Lincoln Southeast game joining the games that were already scheduled on Friday. So you've got So it mentioned that Lincoln Southeast, Elkhorn South, mentioned Prep West Side. You've got Omaha North and Bellevue West. You've got Millard South, Millard West. Like there are a lot of.
I'm very curious about Millard West because they could be in that. They could be a dark horse. They were in others receiving votes. You bring back, obviously Williams. You're good with Peterson at quarterback, where he gives you dual threat. They kind of interest me a little bit. I'll be curious to see. That score will definitely be one that I think is maybe flying under the radar to the non-Millard folks, but for us, that one's got my attention.
Yeah, and so unfortunately, I'll be down at the Vandy Center for volleyball Friday night. So tomorrow's that Papio Millard North game is the only one I'm going to be able to see in person this week.
Well, at least you get to see Brasido, you get to see Barrientos, that two-headed monster. You get to see Ingerson, who's fantastic, and then we know about Vermas. And I tell you, the back end for Millard North, that secondary, it's pretty good. That's a pretty good secondary. If Millard North gets any, if they can stay healthy and develop some guys up front, they lost a lot up front, so we'll see. But skill wise, there could be some points scored tomorrow between those two teams.
Yeah, Class B. We only talked about A, but Class B, you got Bennington Scott right off the bat.
Oh yeah,
Pius X going to Scottsbluff. That's
seen Sebastian Boyle firsthand.
Yep.
6.5 hours on a bus, man. That's it'll be longer than that because I'm sure they'll make a stop. It's a tough track to make.
Blair will look to bounce back against Plattsmouth. You've got Waverly and Elkhorn matching up.
Sneaky good one.
Beatrice Gross got pushed back to Friday as well, I believe. So, a lot of good matchups. Ashland Greenwood, Columbus Lakeview down in Class C.
Couple teams that have had a lot of recent success. Here we go again.
Yep. So, a loaded week one right off the bat. Got so many of these rivalries, these tough matchups. Excited to get a chance to talk about it all again next week, which will be Monday is the plan.
We are Mondays. I think we're locked in. NEB Preps will be a Monday thing. And be honest, how closely were you checking the weather for outdoor volleyball coming up?
I've tried to avoid looking at it too much beforehand because obviously it's going to change. Looks like the heat. Fortunately, the heat wave is breaking after Thursday and won't be back for next week. It'll still be hot, but by that time of the day, it'll be in shade. A little more worried for the Wayne State
early.
That one be a little bit warmer in that one. Hopefully the second game.
With the sweat, yeah.
Hopefully the second game will be fine. But excited to get a chance to go out and see that.
Yeah, that's the multi-talented Jacob Padilla. I'm Old DB. We'll be back next week with another edition of Nebraska Preps.